Welcome everyone to Voices of Terminus, show number 12. And I'm joined today by Kodiak. Say hello, Kodiak.
Good afternoon, guys.
Say hello, Lix.
Hello!
And as per usual, we've run down our topics for today's show. And you guys all know we're going to cover the VR and Pantheon news, the forum hot topic, which are actually split down into two today. We have zone-specific skills tied to the zone's backstory and tavern bounties, and the latest screenshots, obviously. And then to finish it off, we have other news, basically relating to the VOT and whatever. So, Kodak, do you want to start off with the news? First news segment.
All right. So on November 3rd, Pantheon MMO tweeted, "Whoa! Don't look down. What's the first thing you want to do when visiting Wild Inn, the Halfling home city?"
And that news segment is actually related to the latest screenshots. We'll bring that up later. Next, you want to run down onto the next segment?
Okay, November 7th, we saw a tweet. Name a region or climate you would love to experience in an MMORPG setting that isn't typically offered. Our very own Uranilla says, a swamp with huge trees, quicksand everywhere would be cool, covered in fog and lots of dangers from large crocs and mosquitoes. Spooky weebo, whatever. Says Underworld, meet Death. He's actually a cool guy. Dunkmeister says, I like the thought of petrified dragons with fights in and around the bodies, perhaps in a mountain being excavated by the dwarves. It's kind of trying to wrap my head around that one. So, petrified dragons in a mountain. Whatever. Aren't they just statues?
Yeah. I don't get it either. That's all right.
Eric Johansson says, more jungles, less deserts would be a good heuristic in my opinion. I can agree with that one.
Yeah.
I'm a little tired of deserts. I mean, there still has to be some, one or two. Nick says, this may not be what you're asking, but for EQ1, full ocean zones, like Ocean of Tears, humorous, deep, more memorable, and immersive. But if you didn't work on your swimming skill, they were hell on earth. Our very own Frogzor says, a zone where it was pitch black and you had to carry a light source at all times. The zone map would be constantly changing. Something like the Gray from EQ, where you needed to have dead man floating, etc. Since it was an airless environment, it was a neat idea. See, my first thought when I read this tweet was the Gray, because that was crazy unique and I loved it. TK says, I would love a stormy ocean where it's always raining and heavily thunderstorming. I had once hoped for this with boats in Vanguard. I would like to see a zone that does have like perpetual hurricanes or something like that, like more often than not. Mm. Oh, what the hell? Brislin says caves and caverns with water features and caverns only accessible via underwater caves. Also jungles, as already stated. Aaron Tremblay says 3 of 3 timed challenges and special events can make mundane areas feel special. Think the collapsing house held up by Sabin in Final Fantasy III. I think that one's a little off topic, but still a neat idea. Chris Leckness says, more Everfrost and Hallis-like zones with some stormy snow and ice. Yeah, some primarily wintry zones with a lot of like blizzards and stuff would be pretty cool. Masick says, large, long-abandoned battlefields where vicious predators pick clean the bones of the dead and grave robbers seek profit. It would be kind of cool to have like a previous battlefield. Mm. Like you got the bodies everywhere, and then you got your vultures and stuff around. I don't think we've seen anything like that in any on a large scale anyway.
Yeah,
that would be something new and different. Ashen Drake says a large Underdark style area with a complete ecosystem, not just caves or a snowy alpine mountain that storms all the time. I kind of agree with that, an actual ecosystem that they do an underground, a large underground area. More often than not, we see just a couple caves and that's it. You know, even if you live underwater, you need water, you need food. So you rarely see like underground rivers and such like that, but that would be kind of neat. Yoko is Ender says a molten volcanic area, say where eruptions happen in a pool of lava and bam, raid boss or boss zone. Run! That'd be kind of cool. Need a world event. A volcano erupts and this like big lava monster comes out or something. God, I kind of get chills thinking of that. Drew says, large underground caverns, flowing water, ruins, phosphorescent pools, and stalactites that illuminate when mages are near. That'd be kind of cool.
That'd be kind of cool.
I never thought about, I figured just phosphorescent fungus on the wall or something, but having stalactites and stalagmites that glow would be kind of neat too.
Yeah.
Psychedelic, man. Brandon T. Loesch says, besides the single-player games, Dead Space 3, Tomb Raider, no MMO has done a snowy area right. I'm trying to think. Yeah, they've all been kind of like cardboard set feel to them, so I can kind of agree with that, to be honest. Rastia says, underground maze-like caverns with beautiful glowing plant life. Places you'd be happy to get lost in. Zimnil Redoran says, wooden region with some inner valleys. So I guess he's talking like heavily forested areas that have open, like some glens, I guess you call them. Some open fields.
Yeah.
Had some butterflies and some deer. We can all be happy. Skip through the daisies. As much as that sounds like I'm razzing him, I'm not. I actually think that'd be pretty neat. Raz says, underwater frog people cities. No frog lucks.
No.
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 Well, no. I
No
agree.
pandas.
Cities. That underwater cities are neat. But no frog lucks.
No frog logs.
They were stupid. I'm not even beating around the bush to be polite. They were stupid.
Quack.
Tarquin McMoy says, Arrakis? That sounds familiar, but I can't recall. Streak says, Sky Zone would be cool, like Planes of Air, when you could fall off and land in the ocean. Love that jump. That's something that's very cool. You could be in one zone, fall, and end up in another zone. Stuff like that would be pretty cool. Christopher Brown says, love the underwater cities like the one in Lake of Ill Omen, which is Vexar, I think. Muffins and Milk says, a zone where it's storming or hurricane conditions all the time. Michael Craighead says, oceans, but not in it, on it, ship to ship. So I guess a zone that offers ships to players.
Well, there is that one screenshot where they have a bunch of ships.
Right. That would be a really neat way to do PvP.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting.
Ship to ship.
Or even as a kind of like a, it's a wrong word, but dungeon-like. You go through ship to ship, trying to, bash your way through the dungeon. You have to get on a lifeboat, travel to the next one over, and then fight your way over to the big main pirate ship or whatever, and then defeat the boss.
I think that one, someone's got to write that note down. That's something worth discussing down the road. Absolutely. I don't know for PvE. Could be tricky, but still. Hugo Desjardins says, catacombs with a wave system to go down. Every level is harder and darker. Last level, no light. Screams devils on walls. Holy. So, from that, what I'm gathering is like multi-tier dungeons, which I think they're going to do anyway.
Yeah.
But have the atmosphere slowly get darker and more crazy. I think that would be cool. I mean, even though you're a higher level going to a harder area, not only are the mobs harder, but it's harder to navigate. That's something interesting that I think should be explored. Steve Altimus says maybe a castle in the clouds as you get glimpses of the world below. That one would be tough to really justify, but I'm sure they could do it. When I think of that, I think of like, a very generic castle on a fluffy cloud. And I know that's not what it means.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that's what I was kind of picturing.
I know there's a lot more to it. I kind of wish some of these Twitter people were in chat so I could ask them these questions, but yeah. We're going to assume that he means more than that. Hugo Desjardins says, 1. Snowstorm regions, 3 to 4 feet of snow on the ground. Reduce movement. Creatures that come up at you from hiding under the snow.
Right, before you carry on with that, so 3 to 4 feet of snow on the ground. So that would mean you wouldn't see, the halflings. All you'd see is the hair popping up every now and then.
Or the dwarves.
Or the dwarves.
Or the gnomes.
that makes me think. That makes me think of those YouTube videos where you see like a golden lab out in the snow for the first time jumping around, and he's so deep in there you can barely see him. To me, that's the halfling. Hello, Mr. Firesmite. Number 2, they said deep jungle full of basilisks and toxic mushrooms. Better check up in the trees because those armored and enraged monkeys jump on you. Or snakes. We've never seen a game where snakes fall on you.
Yeah, that's true.
There are snakes that they climb trees and they fall on people.
Yep.
And I'd freak the heck out. I mean, I would scream like a little Girl Scout on fire.
But since you brought up monkeys, it kind of reminds me of Monkey Island. You guys know Monkey Island, the game, right? I'd love to see something like that, a huge Monkey Island or something like that. A Mayan cave in the Congo.
In EverQuest 1, off of the Field of Bone, there was this little island where there was a giant ape. It was for, I think it was Druid Epic, maybe? I don't remember. But anyway, to have this tiny little hidden away island, you get monkeys up in the trees throwing stuff at you. I'm just going to say stuff and let your mind wander. Number 3, boats that traverse stormy oceans and you're attacked while on the boat. Stop on an island full of undead. Can't go back. The port is on the other side. So kind of like, that would be a really neat dynamic event. You take a ship. Ship's attacked. You fail. You end up on an island. In order to get to the next port, you have to fight your way through a bunch of undead. That to me would be like, you're fighting for your life. You just don't want to deal with this. But it's one of those things where it's like, it would have to be a percentage chance of happening each time the boat travels. Because if it happens every time, people are just going to be like, oh my god, again.
When you finish this, I have got a crazy idea.
Okay, well, we've got one more tweet.
Yes, I've been writing down ideas too.
My man,
you've been going off of these.
Notes. Next one is Michael Sedono, who says high elevation like Mount Everest type XP camps would be awesome, and I absolutely agree.
Right, so let me go and bring in this idea because nobody's actually mentioned it. What about a zone or a building or whatever where we're actually upside down? So instead of seeing your character on the normal screen as you normally would, it's completely upside down. And
I had gravity as one of my things.
Trying to play the game like that, where you're upside down. I mean, they did something similar in a few instances in EverQuest 2, where you would be upside down for a short period of time. But have a full zone or area where you walk in and all of a sudden, like in Inception, you start turning and you're upside down with your group. And you're actually viewing it, top to bottom.
Mm-hmm. It would be interesting, like even if you go first person, where you go into almost like one of these crazy funhouse type things. You go into the next room and everything's upside down, but then you go to the next one and everything's normal but wavy or something.
So as I was listening to all of these ideas from other people, the ones that I wrote down was I thought quicksand was a good idea, like being able, getting stuck in quicksand, whatever. Yep. Poisonous swamps is another good idea. When you were talking about the moving zones or whatever, I think of like a labyrinth, like in what is that one where they're in Hades and all the walls are moving and they're getting chased by the Minotaur, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, the labyrinth.
Yeah, the movie, or there's a movie that has that. I think that would be kind of cool, where the walls are moving. You have to time it right to get to the next room, stuff like that. Slippery ice in the tundra zones.
And frogs right on your tail. You guys sharing the same thing here.
Weightless zones. Like I said, so you're floating. You gotta have something to hold you on. Basically there's no gravity in the zone. So whether it's a sky zone or whatever it is, you're just basically floating. And then as far as like that last one where it says high elevation, I just think there should be very high resistant requirement zones, so that you have to have the proper armor, the proper resistant gear, the proper ruins, all that stuff in order to even be competitive in that zone. Otherwise, you walk into that zone, you're just gonna die. So those are my thoughts and ideas on zones.
Cool.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of dropping the pen. I think there's a lot of fantastic ideas on this tweet. I mean, I never would have thought of the high elevation where it's a very, very high risk versus reward kind of thing. Like, you could say like you need extreme resistances.
Like you have to go and get a specific set of gear just to even fight in that.
Right. And maybe XP is exponentially higher for the risk, because of the risk that you have to take. I mean, I love that. Even if you're doing like mountain trails to go up higher and higher and higher, and it gets harder versus their tier dungeons where you go down and it gets harder.
Said an altitude sickness, so you can only do it for a certain amount of time. You have to come back down off of that mountain after, let's say, an hour of grinding. Otherwise, the tick is just going to overwhelm you and you're going to die.
Right. You could do something.
And maybe it has
every 15
12-hour timer or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love that idea. It's one of these things where it's like, all right, we can't screw around. This isn't for a general public kind of populous zone where everybody likes to go. It's for those people who love PvE, love the challenge, but not everybody's going to go there because for some people it's just not for them, which is understandable. Meaning there's still
like you said, it could be in a thunderstorm, it could be a high on a mountain, it could be in a poisonous swamp, it could be all these different bios that could be so extreme that you need specific armor, the right class.
When I was thinking about the swamp idea, I automatically thought about Star Wars. Luke Skywalker going to visit Yoda on his planet there. It was all swamp. That's how I would love to see a swamp done. We've seen swamps in other games where they have they'll have a little pond or little valleys of swamp going around, but there's no quicksand in it or anything like that. And it just came to me thinking back when I was thinking about the idea. I would love to see an actual swamp where it's purely just water, where it comes up to maybe your knees when you're running through it and everything, and there's quicksand everywhere and dangers everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Necro said something about switching out gear and whatever, but they've already said they're going to have situational gear. So you're going to have bunches of different things. So if you want to fight in specific zones, there's not going to be one gear set for each class. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to have different gear for different situations.
It really depends on how they do their itemization, especially when you're considering like your typical resist set. I've seen games where they basically put so much resist on a very specific piece of gear that you go into a fire zone with lots of lava and fire casters and stuff, and all you gotta do is put on these fire resistance boots because there's so much resistance on them.
Selin has a good idea as well. A zone with disintegrating earth, you fall in deep holes. So you're going around with your group, and all of a sudden the earth just falls underneath you and you fall down a level. So now you've got to try and find your way back up, or you need to find your way down. So it keeps like a stepping stone.
Right. Yeah. See, when people talk about like their experiences in other games, EverQuest 1, EverQuest 2, WoW, anything, when you find these crazy traps, like say, it's a false floor, and then all of a sudden you fall into a spike trap. Does it suck? Well, obviously it sucks, but you always remember that, and it's always an experience of like, oh my god, remember when that ranger went to pull? He ran off and just boop.
Remember when that wall moved and 10 mobs came flowing out of it, or when the floor moved from underneath us? That's why I think like having a labyrinth type zone, you know, like I think of that movie where they're being chased by the Minotaur and all the walls are moving around them, you know.
What about
like,
a mirror?
That would be huge.
What about a mirror? You know, you have...
Ooh, that would be kind of
almost like a fun house.
Yeah, you know, have a mirror, basically. You know, you see a mirror of you, and, you know, the mirror could also have the monster in it, and you don't realize it, and all of a sudden it comes out of the mirror and attacks you and stuff like that.
Well, that would really only work for action combat, not tab target combat.
True, that is very true. Because you would have... That would be something where dodging out of the way would be very easy to integrate, whereas with Pantheon using your classic style MMO mechanics, it's kind of like,
I'm saying, once you have it targeted, you wouldn't be fooled by a mirror.
Well, what about breaking the glass then? You have to break the glass to find your way out. You have to find the right mirror.
Hey, remember? Remember in what was that building game that we all played? What was it called again? Landmark. Yeah. And somebody made that glass thing, right? And you couldn't tell where the walls were.
Yep.
And you were trying to get from point A to point B, and just kept smacking into the walls.
See, here's what I think. You take like the glass idea, change it a little bit, make it ice, okay? Because you know ice can be
about like clear, see-through ice, so you don't even know where the walls are, basically.
Right. And here's the thing:
walking right into walls.
You can find which ones are false because they have slight imperfections in the reflection. So there's still going to be mobs running around, but you could just run along the wall and you would still hit them. You'd collide and still walk along them. But then you would notice one's like maybe it's a little taller than the rest in terms of reflections. Like, oh, this is an illusion. You walk through it. There's a doorway. I mean, there's a lot that can be done here. It's kind of hard to integrate stuff like, we'll say, the upside down room. While that is a great idea, unless there's a lot of ornamentation on the ceiling, then you basically just have a flat room with lots of stuff up top, right?
Yeah. I mean, you just take like like a castle and just make it a completely glass castle where you could see the floors above and the floors below and the wall. You know, like you could see all the mobs, but you have no clue if it's on that side of the wall or. Right. I just think it would be super crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go.
I would really love to just see them integrate more interesting environments versus just. Granted, the eye candy that they showed us so far is absolutely stunning. Just kind of like stuff hidden in the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go and move on to our first forum topic. Zone-specific skills tied to the zone's backstory. And this was brought to us, or was posted by Jecklinger99. So, he goes off saying, I'm not sure if this has been discussed anywhere, but I had an idea for a system that could be implemented where players could have a regent-based zone-specific spell that could be applied to the group's ammo, weapons, or armor. Along the lines of a druid getting an icy damage shield type spell that would grow ice thorns on the druid's or group mate's ammo, weapons, or armor. Maybe a damage shield if casted on armor, or proc-based bonus damage on ammo and weapons. The spells could be different for each zone, so that only one type of spell could be used in that area, and the reagents are only found in that zone. And the spell for that zone would be tied to other combat strategies based on the types of mobs in that environment. For example, your group may be grinding on fire mobs in a camp in that zone, and get a slight advantage by having the ice skill to attune their gear and be more effective against the fire faction mobs. Further example. You've progressed through your newbie zone and are entering your first hub zone. The hub zone is a fiery landscape with fire-based mobs. There could be some zone backstory for the enemy faction ravaging the surrounding area, and their leader being a fire mage, zone boss, who is located in a fire temple, zone's main dungeon. Along with the fire mage boss, there is an opposing ice mage faction. The players would be introduced into a quest series that would reward the player with an ice buff that could only be used in that zone. Along with the ice buff, there could be regions found only in that zone to increase the efficiency of the buff. The buff could be used on ammo, weapons, or armor. Other classes would get something in the line with their class. Druid could get a snow spell, archers a frost proc for their arrows, warrior an ice proc for their sword, paladin an ice shield, etc. The ability could be a zone sensitive skill icon in the player's skill tree that wouldn't be functional until they complete the quest, and the icon could change automatically on the hotbar based on which zone they were in, as to not clutter up the hotbar with an icon for each zone. What do you think?
Well, I know we talked about this before the show. We were talking about the what's that, Sinister Strike or whatever that you get, you know, after completing certain quests or against particular mob. You've killed like 300 orcs. Now you can use that ability against orcs or, you know, whatever. And they can do that same type of spell or ability in any particular zone too, based on if it's based off of a quest. You know,
I mean, technically, zone-specific skills are going to be in the game regardless. As we know, the weather's going to affect us, and it's already been said that the druid will be able to play with the weather to some point. They haven't revealed as to how much or anything like that. We know the environments will play a part in zones, etc. So it's kind of already in game, but you know, this is going into a more personalized, your class, your character area.
Well,
Go on.
Sorry.
Go on.
I was just saying, because that's what we were talking about, like halflings having a special ability in the halfling city because they're drawing from their main city, you know, some type of power source, or even the archive with their, you know, with their stone that, you know, gives them life, you know. So while they're in that starting city or that zone, they either get some type of a buff or they get some type of a special ability or something of that nature.
This kind of touches into the idea we talked about last time with the environments affecting you, and you've been able to go out and you'd have to go into that zone like Wild's End. Let's take the halflings. You go into Wild's End for the first time. You're not from there. You know, you're fairly effective to its environment, how it affects you. Your resists are fairly low, etc. So you would go into the tavern or whatever, or, you know, eat the natural herbs that are there to build up your resist. It's, you know, you could kind of connect the zone specific skills tied to the zone's backstory that way as well. Basically, you enter a zone for the first time, you would have to go through a series of quests to, you know, be accustomed to use your abilities for that zone, maybe, you know, to a better effect or something like that. You could actually skill your abilities in that zone because it's affecting you.
Well, I know we talked about that same topic was as far as you know, when you go into a new zone, because that other race basically brought that zone with them, right? That's their home city or whatever. They may have different atmospheres that it may be hard for you to breathe in or whatever. You have to make your body adapt to that zone. So I think that should be more of a, you know, you're not going to be able to, acclimation or whatever, zone acclimation quests like that, Dark.
Yeah, that would be interesting. The only thing that I have a fear of is I'm one of these guys that my skill bars are valuable real estate to me. I try to make my action bars as clean as possible so that I don't have a clutter. It's easy to know what I need to hit for whatever reason. If I need to have like a rainy skill, I need to have a skill up for a blizzard, need to have one up for whatever. That's going to bug the crap out of me. Whereas with EverQuest 2, they've done something similar, but it was on a specific type of mob called the Master's Strike, where you do a quest, you learn about this opponent's weakness, and all of a sudden you can use this ability to hurt goblins. You do the same thing for orcs, and now this ability affects goblins and orcs.
Yeah.
If they can combine it into one, sure, absolutely. That's cool. I'm all for it. I don't see how anything like this could be done in terms of like armor. Ammo and weapons, yeah, because I consider ammo a weapon, so I could definitely see that. Armor is a little rough. Even say effects on hit. If I have a breastplate that only has this effect, like a certain effect, if I'm in a desert, say I get hit in the desert and all of a sudden I go poof, I have this little fire nova around me. 2% chance, we'll say. I mean, and then I go to somewhere else and it's a single target little frost shock. That's cool, but then I've got to remember all the things that my chest plate can do, because if I'm in the desert and I'm AEing randomly, I have to adjust my attacks accordingly. If we pull multiples and they're crowd controlled, I need to pull way away from them so I don't break them.
See, I just had an idea while you were just talking. Also, basically, it would be like a conditioning skill, right? Making your body acclimate to specific environments, right? It's getting your body conditioned to be in the extreme hot, in the extreme cold, in the extreme, whatever. So you'd have to start in the lower level cities.
That's why
start your conditioning, right? Before you can move into the mid-level, before you can move into the advanced. Before we were talking about the high-level resistant zones. You couldn't go, if you fought in your desert your entire life, and then go to an extremely cold zone up a high mountain pass or whatever, you would freaking die.
I mean,
you have to condition your body to withhold the elements.
They could use this idea to some point where it would be like, you start off in your, let's just call it newbie zone, and you're working your way to the first hub area. Now there's an NPC before you actually go into that hub is going to tell you, hey, this zone is blah blah blah, there's these dangers in there, there's these kind of monsters in there, blah blah blah. I can teach you. It should be something that could be, that I could see this being something as you can do it if you want, or you don't have to, or you can leave it. So it's basically a side quest that you could, or a side series of quests.
That's a good thing, because let's say if somebody wants to spend the time and acclimate their character to all these specific environments, then that's one way to do it. Or you can offset it with OGs. You don't have to do it, but you could use your OGs for something else, right? Or you could use your OGs for resistance, right? So I would rather spend my time acclimating my character, right? So I could use my OGs for something else, something that would make me, heal for more, or do more damage, or So there's more than one way to get your character acclimated for a specific high-level zone.
Oh yeah. I mean, as a tank, if there are quests to improve my performance in a specific environment, even if it's just a minute, virtually meaningless amount, like say 100%, you gain maybe an extra 2% on that. As a tank, I'm gonna do it, because every point in my defensive skills matters to me, because that's the kind of tank I am. I need to literally soak up as much punishment as possible, so I'm gonna do that. It will drive me crazy if I don't. So then it becomes a matter of, for how much this acclimation quest gives me, the quest needs to have the difficulty and time that is appropriate to what I get. Because if I'm spending 3 days to get 2% improvement, I'm still going to do it, but I'm not going to be happy about it.
Yeah. It has
and
to
if I'm
be
not
balanced.
happy about it, I'm going to be I'm be running my mouth. It's just the way it is.
It should if they do go with the option of, you can do it, but you don't have to. It's going to have to be fair on both parts. It's going to have to be the people that put the time in to go and do it. They should, see the result, but it shouldn't be something that overpowers the other people that said, guess what? I haven't got the time to go and do this.
It's all about having the option, having lots of things optional. But in the end, you could really do anything in a video game as long as you balance it correctly.
Because this is stuff as well that you could do later on as well. This is adding more immersion and more downtime things for you to do, rather than just going crafting, bringing up your faction, this, that, and the other. You can then go and acquire your abilities for each different environment.
Right. Yeah, even if it's something real simple like spend 250 hours in this type of environment.
Yeah.
Then that's where I'm going to be to craft. That's where I'm going to be questing, because it's all going to help me in the end.
Well,
it's like doing
it's
two
going
quests for the price of one.
make people want to explore other zones. You're not just going to get stuck in the same 1 to 50 grind. You're going to be like, oh, I need to go and fight in this type of environment. I need to go acclimate to this type of environment and grow your character.
I I mean, they could even go like, the simplest way, like Alexa just said, spend X amount of time in this environment. They could even go one further and say, right, you spend X amount of time in this environment, so Zone A is the first environment for that specific, thingy you're trying to get. But it's a lower level, so you would have to go and find the next tier.
That's the thing. I was just thinking like crafting, right? Or like nodes, farming nodes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can't farm a tier 5 node unless you've skilled up through tier 1, 2, 3, 4.
So you have to go through the different similar zones to get to that max point. So you're not just, you're not being bored. Okay, I'm stuck now in Wild's End because that's where I'm getting this environmental bonus and I'm spending 250 hours in there. But there's another zone exactly the same, but it's a different tier. So you go in, you have to keep on moving throughout the different. So you basically get taken as well to adventure through the lands. You're automatically going to go and adventure because you're trying to bring up this skill.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what it's gonna force people to explore and travel and
that's the main
people thing. And so they're not stuck in their on their little island, just being a little vendor, farming some boss and selling. You know what I'm saying? Like we want to explore.
Yeah, and see that's the main thing. I mean, this has actually been promoted as a sandbox MMO, much akin to the older MMOs that we've seen. When you compare it to newer MMOs, there's less exploration. There's less reason to explore because it's just hub. You go from here to here to here to here to here. You're done. When you do things to promote exploration, your people stay longer. They have more fun. You have more time to do expansions or additional content. It's just you do have to put a little extra work into it. Yes, because hubs are pretty easy. Oh, get a bunch of quests. Link them to this area. It is a little more work, but the gains that you get from a development standpoint far exceed the time you put in. And it's one of the things that why people get so bored with MMOs nowadays. There's no reason to explore. Hell, some of them, like Riders of Icarus, you don't explore. You simply don't because you go literally like around the zone in a loop, then move to the next one.
Well, that was one of the things that I was saying about like World of Warcraft earlier, few shows back, whatever. It's like I never really looked up to even look at the world because I was so worried about that next question mark, that next exclamation mark. Like I was just running from hub to hub to hub to hub to getting max level and never really enjoying what the art concepts and the zones and the people. Never talked to anybody. I just just did my thing.
Yeah, exactly. And now hubs do need to exist for certain things, but they can't be the primary method of your gameplay. Because you will get bored. I don't care who you are. You're going to get bored, right? If you could take a player and just say, stand him here, and the next one here, and the next one here, all in a line, just say, pick direction and go. And they all have an adventure. You're proving to them that no matter what you decide to do, where you decide to go, you're going to have fun. So all of a sudden, maybe today, instead of going over those mountains, I'm going to go through that valley. Because I know what's over there. For a certain extent, but because I know I'm still going to be progressing myself, I'm going to be still gaining, I'm still going to be having fun over this way, why wouldn't I go? I'm going to want to go everywhere now because it's always going to feel different.
But back to the whole zone-specific backstory abilities, whatever, I think that based on the lore of that, let's say you're in the Halfling City, right? Or let's say the Archive where they have that stone that brings them to life, that gem or whatever. They should be able to have some type of a quest where you can tap into it and gain an ability. But it only works in that one zone where that stone exists, right? You can't use that ability, at the Dwarven City because they have a different quest with a different ability for their region.
It's this is kind of like your, the gaining access to the zone kind of thing as well. You would have to go and gain access. You have to do the story quest to gain access to like they did in EverQuest 2 with the boat rides. You wanted to go to Nectarless Forest for the first time, or to Enchanted Lands. You had to go on that boat ride to get there. And you had to fence off the monsters, and either you made it or you didn't. You got access. So this is kind
Rite
of
of passage.
rite of passage. This is a similar thing that can be done as well. Not technically a rite of passage, but a rite of understanding that zone's environment and, you know, the lush surroundings it implies. You have gained, you know, you have actually been in that zone, and you've gained the ultimate
ability to perform better.
Yep, ultimate ability to perform better.
Now, when it comes to zone tied or zone related skills, or even environmental related skills, I mean, what kind of things can you guys see? Personally, when I see it, I don't know why, I'm just stuck on buffs. Like a self-only buff. I'm just stuck on that for some reason. I mean, can you guys see maybe
that's what
procs tied to weapons? Can you see like what?
Well, I can see it affecting the weapons, for instance. You know, like he's already suggested, adding a damage shield or damage spikes to your weapon or something like that, depending on what class you are as well. As we know, the druid's going to affect the weather, etc. So if it's an ice zone or something like that, then a druid should be able to maybe manifest, or a summoner should be able to manifest something off of that. That gives your ammo or your weapons or your armor a resist or an advantage, or your weapons as well. So not just a personalized buff. I could see other ways of you becoming accustomed to that zone. A better awareness, for instance. It doesn't necessarily have to be a buff. It could also affect your stats. You have a better awareness. You have a better movement speed,
perception,
a better perception, and
maybe more stamina in the area or whatever. Yep. What do you think, Code?
Same thing. Like Jerk Horn said it too. Like I'd rather get a buff for that zone, you know, for my accomplishment, rather than an ability. Because, you know, each class is going to have their own abilities. I'd rather just get a buff for being like, hey, I completed all the perceptions in this zone, or, you know.
Now, here's another question related to that. Would you prefer an active and it be stronger? Like you have to manually activate it, but it's stronger, or would you rather it be weaker and be passive? It's always
passive. Always passive. I just always want to be badass without thinking about it.
I'd like to actually click on it. I have to click activate it because it keeps my mind going. If everything's automated, we get lazy. We become lazy. We become, you know.
Yeah, but if there's so many other moving parts in the game, the last thing you want to think about is, you know, to keep re-clicking this skill. Oh crap! I forgot to click that skill.
I used to hate that though. When they introduced that into EverQuest 2, where all your group buffs automatically you cast them once. And that's it. You're done.
Yeah, but that's not a class buff.
No, but
that's just a zone, an area. While you're in that area, you should always have that. As soon as you leave that area, it goes away.
You should have to remember to turn it on. It should be we're talking about challenge here. You're asking for challenge, so you got this spell, but you forgot to turn it on. That's your fault.
Right.
You should remember to turn it on.
Different classes, different roles do have different level of difficulty. Because tanks have to be very aware of everything going on around them. They've got to know their group. DPS have to make sure that they're not standing in wrong areas. Positioning is generally very good. They have to watch how much damage they're doing, engage if they're about to pull a threat. Healers have to watch everybody, see what's going on, be prepared for additional damage incoming, etc. What if there was a quest tied to these zone-related skills, they gave you a choice? They could tell you that you could take the passive version, but it's weaker. And it's always on when you're in this zone, because me as a tank, I would choose that. One less thing I got to worry about. Or in Yarnella's case, you could choose the active skill, where if, God forbid, some reason, this healers become the typical whack-a-mole with health bars. Like I said, God forbid, not saying it is. Then you would definitely want to go active to make your gameplay more interesting. I think that would probably be the best way to go.
I mean, you could even split it up and say, right, the passive one is permanent, boom, it activates in the zone. Your active one is a short-term buff that you get. You know, it lasts for 15 seconds. It's going to be ultimately more powerful, but it's not going to be so powerful that it's going to be constant.
There's a 5-minute recast timer.
5-minute recast timer. It does, it has this effect on it for 15 seconds for the group, or blah, blah, blah. So you can pick, depending on what kind of playstyle you're going for, what kind of class you are, etc. You would either pick the passive spell or the active spell.
Right.
Either way of doing it.
See, with that, I mean, I know gamers that would love that because it constantly gives them something to do while they're playing.
The other thing you guys got to remember too is that we're only we're gonna have limited space. It's not gonna be like EQ2 where you can have 7 or 8 skill bars up. Like, you have to go into each fight and everything that you do with, let's say, 10 abilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you're going to want the passive versus the clickable, because if your spell bar and your ability bar is full of stuff that you're going to need, you're not going to be able to change it out that fast.
Right. If they do have multiple effects that are generally the same, that would definitely just have to be somehow tied into a single ability. It's just, to me, like I said, my real estate and my hotbars is at a prime, so it's got to be a damn useful ability for me to put it on the hotbar, especially if it's from 1 to 6, because that's what I'm always hitting. Everything else is just my oh shit buttons.
Right, so let's go and move on to the next topic. Definitely interesting. So if you guys want to get involved, have some ideas to zone-specific skills tied to the zone's backstory, visit the forums for that link. I'll post it into chat for you guys to add your thoughts and ideas. And now the next topic is tavern bounties, and this was brought to us by Ryhoof22, and just a fun thought I had just sitting on the couch. How about certain taverns tell you about some problems they have had with certain monsters, bandits outside of their town, and they want you to take care of them and send back proof of you doing so, either it be goblin ears, bandit insignias, and also the higher ranking the goblin is, the bigger the ear is, or something showing rank. Now, what makes these different than quests is that it builds reputation with the town you're liberating with these mobs, and it builds a certain currency only this town will take, and they support most levels. Think if it goes to level 50 for a cap, I'd say 1 to 15, 25 to 30, 45 to 50. The reason I separate them like this would be to make it you can't just grind in this one area to get everything you need. So you will have to explore the world, but also brings players back to the lower level areas and farm the higher level sections of a dungeon you once not to be able to go to cause you were too low. Also want to say that this gear is slightest worse than what can be dropped at your level. Like, let's say a level 50 mob drops a shield and it has 19 AC, 5 strength, 5 magic resist, then the bounty reward guy might sell you a 17 AC, 2 strength shield, something to still go for if you want it, but still drives a player to try and get the shield that drops deep down into the dungeon at the same time. Also say the 1 to 15, 25 to 30, 45 to 50 bounty currency is separated so someone doesn't grind their hearts out to get a piece of that gear that outlevels them by a ton. You're laughing, Lex.
Yeah.
Why
I don't think
laughing?
people are going to like what I have to say. While I'm all for something like this, all this screams to me is back when I was twinking alts. I'd go buy hundreds of those crushed bone belts in EverQuest 1. I'd go turn them in and get to level 10 like that, That's all that does. That screams to me. If they can make this a very, very wide variety where you never do the same one twice in however much time, and they put a cooldown between them, and they do really good in terms of changing up where you're going, then absolutely. But if this is just a quest that you can constantly redo over and over again with no restriction, absolutely not. I would rather sit on a cactus and use it as a pogo stick.
I wouldn't think that having repeatable quests would be a good idea for that scenario. But I do think that if, let's say, there was a bounty board, right? So if you were level, 1 through 10, and it said basically, when I think bounty, I think like a wanted poster, right? So it would basically say, this guy is in this zone. Let's, go kill, get your friends together, go kill that mob, bring me back his head to the mayor of the city and get your reward, right? Then you basically go back to that board or wherever it is that has the next wanted poster, but you wouldn't see it for another 5 levels. Like, you would basically have people keep coming back to that bulletin board every 5 or 10 levels, and it would tell them to go check out these new zones. And while you're there, kill this guy, bring back the head, we have a reward for you,
Right. This could absolutely be used as a way to direct players to other zones, and I hope that's what
I'm saying. Yeah.
They did something similar like this in Terra. Once you got to level 65 or level 60 back then, at my time when I was playing active, you could go out and do so-called faction quests, but they were only limited to your level. So it was a challenge. You could not go to the lower levels and go and grind the hell out of these things to get the points, and it was limited to an amount of, you could only do 10 daily quests. They were called daily quests that gave you faction specifically towards this. So it was limited as well. Because I agree with Lex. This is definitely a way to go in, get yourself the crushed bone belts or the bone chips, and then just, return them, and boom, ding, 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 ding. And that's something that we all, I think we can agree on, don't want to see in Pantheon, is an easy way to ding yourself up to max level by grinding stuff like this. And I'm on the same page with Lex. Repeatable quests, hell no.
No. But that's what I'm saying. So when you're talking I think that they should have multiple ways to get quests in this game. When you're talking to perception, when you walk in that tavern and the guy in the corner is saying, psst, hey, come over here, right? And you go over there and he tells you a story and you go and you look into it, right? But I also think you should have a bulletin board somewhere with wanted posters that are level and age appropriate for your group to go and go out and adventure, and they would guide you to the next zone, or they would guide you.
What about splitting it up? What about not just offering your group? What about offering your crafter, your single player, your guild, your group?
Yeah, all the above. Yeah. All the above, yeah. Like, you go to the bulletin board and say, hey, the town needs 400 swords or, whatever, made for next month's battle, right? Right. And you go craft them,
Yeah. The one thing that I want to say, I just want to see a lot of variety.
Yeah.
A lot of variety, because, like I said, my biggest fear is repeatability, because in the older games, you would go out with your high-level guy, you'd get like 60, 70 of the items you need, put it in the bank, grab it with your alt, turn it in, boom. It was annoying. I hated it. Do I want there to be restrictions? Like, I don't want to have to go there every single day to do the same quest over and over. That's why I left WoW, because of daily quests. That's all there was to do anymore. Just do my dailies, then do my raid, then do my dailies. It was boring. It got so repetitive.
That's why I quit WoW too.
Yeah, I wanted to gouge my eyes out. Now, if you can give us a wide variety, everything from single to group, you could maybe even offer a raid one, alpha crafters one, you can even do crafting with single or group, whatever, have fun with it. But just make it so that it's not something that feels like your typical daily. Make it every 2 days, every 3 days. But it's so random that you may never see the same quest.
Well, you could actually pick the difficulty, which would have a timer on it. So if you pick the highest difficulty, it has a 3-day timer on it. If you pick a low difficulty, maybe you could do it once every 12 hours. You know?
I mean, Dark Soul brings in a cool idea as well, that we could connect to that. This idea could be used to separate the city's factions, talk to the city tavern bartenders, the citizen faction, and the captain of the guard for the city guard faction. So this could also, we were talking about the idea of becoming, a higher citizen, a higher respected citizen within the city where you are. So, to become a master crafter, you have to achieve a certain amount of, craft faction, etc. for that city to actually be able to craft for that city. And it was one of those ideas we were talking about. Now, this could also add to it as well.
It could totally be a faction quest thing. Basically, that the bulletin board or whatever is outside of the city, right? So if if I want to have access into the Scar City, which doesn't like anybody, I'm going to have to go and do those constantly to gain my city faction before I can walk foot into the Scar City.
What I was saying is, on Dark Souls' idea is, if you did split the city up in different factions, you had that bulletin board. You got the citizens faction, you got the guard faction, you got the mage faction, all split up in this city. For you to actually become, let's use the word what Nexo says, become a master artificer,
Artificer.
Artificer. Basically, you would have to have all of those factions. You'd have to go and go through all the factions to become that person in that city. That means you are now, you're the president of that city. You have actually achieved that level.
Yeah, you're basically nobility now because everybody knows you.
Exactly. You've unlocked all of those factions.
Right. When I think of tavern bounties, that to me it just makes me feel like, hey, I got home from work. I've had a rough day. I've got 20 minutes to play, maybe an hour. Let's go to the tavern and get a shorter duration quest. Whereas longer duration quests or multi-stage quests could be from more prominent NPC figures, the leader of a town, the leader of the captain of the guard, or whatever. So it is a hub, but it's a hub that you don't necessarily need to go to every day.
You could even add, fun things for you to do though. It doesn't necessarily have to be, go and do this and gather bones and do this and go there. What about, within the city, you've got to go and find a certain merchant and buy...
I dropped my coin purse. Can you find...
Yeah, or stuff like that. Or a thief. A thief has robbed somebody. You've got to go and catch him. You have to actually run after him. There's a timer going. You've got to catch up to this guy, grab him.
Oh, drink the town drunk!
Or that, yeah. I mean, there's so much you could do with the with the tavern bounty idea that offers you something else to do. To just pass the time. You say you got 20 minutes. You still want to log in, play the game, see the game itself. You don't have time to do a dungeon or go run around with spells, but you can do stuff that's fun. Gives you a little bit of faction with that.
Right.
So,
didn't Neverwinter have like those little dungeon things where you could pick the time, like you want to do a little 20-minute one or you want to do a 2-hour one, and basically the reward would be better
certain categories. Now, I'm not a fan of timed quests because, I could get a phone call that could take 20 minutes, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, I got 3 seconds left to run across the map.
No, I wouldn't say timed like as a timer. I would just say the average time for completion is
more of a time category than a timed requirement.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. I also see taverns being huge on perception. Absolutely gigantic. Like note dropping from a person's pocket. Oh, look, it's a treasure map. Let's go. Kind of thing.
You could have a certain NPC that enters the tavern at a certain time that offers a perception. This knight from a foreign place has popped into this town and he's gone into the tavern. You're there, and all of a sudden your perception kicks in. Whoa. This knight seems like he's seen something. Go speak to him. Boom.
Yeah. And you could, I think one of the big things that, as a developer, that they should really at least pursue with an idea like this is have the NPCs in the tavern change on a regular basis. Even if it's just a big list of NPCs that are only found in the tavern, but swap them out randomly every day. Because nothing bugs me more than like when I play Dungeons & Dragons online. You go to a tavern, it's the same people. It's like, really?
Stagnant.
They sit at that table for their entire life? They got to add a little more variety to it so that it feels like...
Yeah, I say the same thing even with guards. Like, those guards, like, even the people in, in London or whatever, those guards, they get off shift, right? Even though they stand there for, 8 hours, they have to go home. Somebody else has to come and relieve them. Like, have them change out, not just have them sit there for 7 years.
Right. And, I mean, like Necro says, the tavern also gives you a lot of opportunity to do stuff like moral choices. Someone drops a coin purse. Do you keep it or do you turn it in?
Yep.
It's not necessarily a decision that may matter because either or, whatever you do could lead you to another quest.
Yep.
You know, but it's the struggle that the person playing the game, sitting here, watching a screen, reading that, it's something that they have to go through. It's like giving you an immersive kind of event without really doing much of anything.
And plus with that idea, like, you know, do you return it, do you not, or do you, you know, involve yourself into this fight, and, you know, do you knock the guy down or do you help him? You know, stuff like that. This is also, you know, relates to what Brad and the team have been talking about, getting people to come back and revisit. You know, this time you've gone to return the purse. Now with your next character, you're going to be evil. You're going to keep it this time.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Or, you know,
yeah.
and so on. So, you know, you've helped this person this time in the bar. You stepped in, helped him from getting beaten up, and this time you joined in on the fight. Just to see what happens.
If I'm a human warrior and my buddy makes a human warrior, we shouldn't have the exact same experience. Plain and simple.
Well, you will to an extent, but
you will if you choose all the same things. But that's the thing. Me being a different person and him being a different person, we should technically have different experiences, from 0 to 50 or whatever. You know,
your faction choices will change your experience too.
We should not be just the same cookie cutter like every single other game out there these days.
Yeah, but you know, that's where I see a difficulty though as well. If they do it right, it can be done. Let's say, for instance, now, you know, you want to help the person, I don't, because that's how I generally feel about the thing, right?
Right.
You've done it, you know, you've helped him, you've been offered your quest, boom, or whatever, you know, this reward or whatever's been done. This is getting towards the quest part. Let's say this happens with quests as well. You can, you know, have two different outcomes. You can choose to, you know, help or choose not to help. You chose to help, I didn't. Now, we still want to play together. How do you still make my quest and your quest completely different, set on different paths, but we can still play together?
That is difficult because, like I said, I do a lot with my wife. She tends to do very morally sound choices. Where I'm the guy dancing around the hut because I set it on fire, and even though it's an orphanage, you know, I'm like, just because it's the way I am, you know.
That's why I see the difficulty base. I would love to see stuff like that. I would love to see more people, you know, be individual, make their individual choices, but we do tend to try as a group pick the same direction to go, and that is why most of us have left the games, because it gets boring after a time. Doing the same
you
old,
play
same old.
with the same people over and over. Eventually, you feel like you're not even making your own choices.
Exactly. And now you have the, you know, you can choose your adventure, choose whatever you want to do, but how do you keep it that it's, you know, we're not drifting apart too much?
Take those matches away from Coach. He wants to burn down an orphanage. I said, take the matches away from him.
That's where I see, you know, the difficulty. You know, that's what SOE Daybreak tried to do with EQ Next. Have you make your own choice, and depending on which way you went and which faction you picked, this, that, and that would happen. But it still affects your group or your you know, your people you're playing with in a whole. Because you've decided to go the good route, I've decided to go the bad route, Kodiak's decided to go, hell no, I'm not going to get involved in this. And you get kind of split up. But, you know, it's going to be really hard for them to keep us close, attained, but make it feel that we're doing something completely different.
Right, and we've addressed this in another show, whereas, like, even though I didn't do my wife's quest line, I can help her on that quest and get something from it.
Yep.
But we're actually running short on time.
Yep, we are. Anyway, you know, it's definitely an interesting topic. Tavern bounties, there's lots of ways where you can do it.
Yeah, get on the forums, put in your 2 cents.
No, don't try and limit yourself to the tavern bounty idea. You know, expand a bit like we've tried to do. Like Dark's idea, having factions split up as well and having it set up for single, and etc., etc. So anyway, let's go and bring up the Slate screenshot from VR of Wild's End. Looks like he's looking up. He's on either a ledge or something, looking up onto what seems to be a part of the city.
Looks like he's standing on a tree limb.
Yeah. Well, that's the latest screenshot, and as you can see, there's lots of colours in Wild's End. Lots of glowing crystals by the looks of it. I like the way the fog's looking.
Mhm.
Yeah, the fog does tend to add to your environmental experience. I mean, I'm almost curious if they're going to have us like running through using tree limbs as paths. It almost looks like you could.
Yeah. So that's the latest screenshot, and then we're going to go and move over now to other news. This Thursday on VOT is the Rogue. We're going to be discussing the Rogue this Thursday. It's the final of the 12 classes that will be available on launch. And then we have the Necro and the Bard to talk about. That will be the last two shows before we take our break in December. And we have our contest that is going until tomorrow. So you have until Wednesday, Wednesday, to send us your jokes about any of the 9 races, Pantheon, at giveaway@pantheon-vot.com. It can be a meme, it can be, just a text, anything goes. Send us your jokes to have a chance to win a Watcher's Pledge and have a copy of the game when it launches.
Yep, they just got to be PG.
Yep, PG. Keep it clean. Nothing above the extraordinary. Lex, you wanted to address something as well about the website.
Yes. I know there hasn't been a whole lot of stuff going on the website besides the fact that I've been crazy busy with preparing to move and all this other stuff. But here's basically what I'm doing, guys. I'm basically on the side building an application like you would click on your desktop, and it's going to be the website. The bonuses to this is basically, in layman's terms, I'm going to be supercharging the website, meaning we can do whatever the heck we want, and the website's not going to skip a beat. 50, 30, 400, 1,000 people on the website at once won't matter. It's going to make things, you're going to have to wait a little bit till I get everything working, because I have to build everything. I've got to build a new server just for it. I got to do a whole bunch of stuff. So we are working on it. There's just no visible changes that you can see right now. And the reason I'm doing this is because when you go to the forums with this supercharged version, you won't have to refresh the website to get new forum posts. It'll just pop up, hey, new post, boop, all that for you. You don't have to do anything. Don't have to refresh, don't have to visit all the time, just pops up for you. Stuff like that. But no, it won't be a downloadable app. It's basically, I'm just supercharging things. It'll still be done through the web just as normal. It's just I'm putting a lot more effort into it, building everything from scratch for us.
Awesome. Very nice.
And I may make an Android app. We'll see.
No promises.
No promises.
Don't quote
Lex
Lex
Still
on
a lot
that.
to do. The next thing that's going to come into the website is probably going to be forums.
Yes. Forums. Very nice.
Yep.
So with that, guys, we are running a bit late. We did have, obviously, technical difficulties, so I think we're just on cue. But join us this coming Thursday, for the Rogue final discussion of the 12 classes that will be out post or at launch. And we'll see you on Thursday, 4 p.m. With that, guys, have a good night. Hope you enjoyed the show. Get some posts out there for us to pick up on. It's getting really hard at the moment to find stuff to talk about, so post your ideas on those forums and we'll get them out and discuss them here on the show. And with that, have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.